The painter's hand was trembling. I noticed it before I noticed the words. The brush hung mid-air, paint dripping down the handle onto his knuckles. His eyes weren't on the wall. He was staring at the attic door, the way a man might stare at a grave he knows too well. "Don't stay here another night," he whispered, his voice thin but urgent. "Take your kids and go now." For a moment, I thought I misheard him. I wanted to laugh or scold, or at least ask what nonsense he was talking about. But then I followed his gaze. The attic door was ajar, just a sliver, enough for the dark to leak out like a secret. My chest clenched hard and quick, as if all the years of my life had knotted there at once. I didn't argue. I didn't question. I grabbed our coats, the keys, and we walked out. No words, no explanation to the children, no goodbye to the walls I had spent decades trying to make into a home. My body decided before my mind could. Survival has a way of cutting through hesitation. And here I am, 62 years old, running from shadows in my own house like a skittish girl. I thought I was long past fear. I thought the years had burned that out of me. But maybe I've only been pretending, stacking silence over silence until the weight felt like peace. Let me tell you who I am before you dismiss me as some fragile, superstitious woman. My name is Evelyn. I was born in a town so small that the church bells doubled as the town clock, and everyone knew if you hung your wash on the wrong day. I married at 19. I buried my husband at 43. Since then, I've kept the family together with hands that never stopped working. 2 jobs, casseroles for the neighbours, sleepless nights stretched over endless days. I never asked for pity. I never asked for much of anything. What I did ask, what I always asked, was simple. Respect. A voice in my own home. A place at the table I fed, at the hearth I kept warm. But respect has a way of slipping through fingers when you're a woman who smiles too easily, who forgives too quickly. People mistake silence for weakness, and I let them. The betrayal I feel now isn't just about that attic door or the painter's warning. It's not even just about my son's wife, Ashley, though she's tangled deep in this. No, the wound goes further back, deeper down. It's about decades of being overlooked, second-guessed, or laughed at like a harmless old fool. It's about the slow theft of dignity, one small cut at a time, until you find yourself bleeding out and no one even notices. I remember once, years ago, when my husband was still alive, how he waved me off during a dinner with his business friends. I'd tried to join their conversation, something about investments and risks. He patted my hand like I was a child reaching for a sharp knife and said, "Don't trouble yourself, Evie. You wouldn't understand." Everyone chuckled politely. I smiled too, though it felt like swallowing glass. That night I washed their glasses, scrubbed their plates, and told myself it didn't matter. But it did. It always does. Now, decades later, I hear echoes of that dismissal in my own home. I see Ashley, all polished words and quick smiles, looking right through me as though I'm a worn piece of furniture she can't wait to replace. I see the way Marcus, my own flesh and blood, leans toward her, blind to her contempt, drunk on her charm. And when I raise my voice, when I try to warn, they look at me like I'm the one losing grip on reality. So when the painter's brush shook and his warning spilled out, I felt something split inside me. Not just fear, something else. Recognition. The sense that whatever was behind that attic door was not new at all. It was only the latest face of something I'd been living with for years. Deceit that thrives in silence. Rot that grows when no one wants to look too closely. I am not a woman who startles easily, but I am a woman who has learned the cost of ignoring warnings, the cost of trusting when I should have questioned, the cost of holding peace when I should have fought. That attic door, half open, became a mirror. Behind it was every humiliation I'd swallowed, every betrayal I'd endured, every truth I'd left unopened because it was easier to keep walking. Not this time. My name is Evelyn. I am 62 years old. I have survived loss, loneliness, and the kind of invisibility that eats a woman alive from the inside. And now, I stand at the edge of something darker, something that threatens not just me, but the ones I love. This betrayal cuts deep, because it's not just about what's been hidden above my head. It's about everything I've been told not to see, not to say, not to feel. It's about a lifetime of being hushed, and I'll be damned if I let the rest of my years pass in silence. When I finally closed the front door behind me that night, coats clutched tight around the children, the street was damp and empty. The painter's warning still echoed in my chest, but it wasn't his words alone that hollowed me out. It was the way he said them, like a man who had seen something he wished he hadn't. Walking down the steps, I thought of all the things I had chosen not to see, and suddenly, it wasn't just the attic that frightened me. It was my own memory, my own history. I have spent most of my life biting back words. My tongue is scarred from the bite marks, though you can't see them. I kept silent when my husband made decisions without me, when money slipped through our fingers, and he swore it was all for the family. I kept silent when his sister moved into our home for 2 years and treated me like a maid. I even kept silent when the night before he died. He confessed debts I had no idea about, debts I paid with the sweat of my own hands, and I thought that was love. That silence meant keeping the peace. That swallowing disrespect was the price of holding a family together. But peace built on silence is no peace at all. It's just waiting for the ground to crack. When Ashley came into Marcus's life, I recognized her smile before I knew her name. It was the same smile his father used to wear when he came home with news he didn't want me to question. Bright, dazzling, rehearsed. That smile is a curtain, and I've lived long enough to know what people like to hide behind curtains. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one evening, the children asleep upstairs, and hearing Ashley laugh at me under her breath. She thought I couldn't hear. She told Marcus I was sweet but simple, like I was an old porcelain vase she had to dust now and then out of politeness. He chuckled, and I watched the two of them lean into each other as if I weren't even in the room. That moment broke something in me, though I didn't let it show, because in her words, I heard the echo of every time a man had waved me off, every time a friend called me too sensitive, every time I let myself be the quiet one, the easy one, the one who could take it. It isn't just my wound anymore. I see it repeating. I see it in the way Ashley rolls her eyes when her own daughter asks too many questions. I see it in the way Marcus dismisses his wife's tears with the same careless shrug his father once gave mine. Patterns, passed down like heirlooms. Poison, disguised as tradition. And that's when the ache turns generational. It's not only about what I suffered, but about what these girls, my granddaughters, my daughter-in-law, will suffer if I do nothing. I see their futures in my past, and I cannot stomach it. You know, people like to romanticize endurance. They say women like me are strong for surviving betrayal, for holding our families together when the men faltered, for enduring humiliation without complaint. They call it resilience. But do you know what endurance really is? It's the art of disappearing while standing in plain sight. It's a kind of slow erasure, and by the time anyone notices, you've already been written out of your own story. That's what betrayal feels like. It's not always loud or violent. Sometimes it's small and constant, like a leak in the roof. Drip, 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 until the whole house is rotten, and you're the only one who smells the mold. I see now that my silence didn't just protect the people I loved. It enabled the ones who hurt me. And worse, it taught my son to expect a woman's silence, to prefer it. Marcus thinks I don't notice, but I see the way his eyes dart to Ashley when I speak, waiting for her cue. I see the way he laughs at her jokes when they cut into me, too quick to be coincidence. He thinks I don't remember what it's like to be young and hungry for approval, but I do. And yet, I can't bring myself to hate him. How could I? He learned from watching me. He learned from the silences I handed down. That is my wound, my sin, and it festers in him, now. When I think of the attic, half open, I don't just see the dark. I see every truth I locked away, every suspicion I smothered, Every instinct I drowned because I thought being a good wife, a good mother, meant never asking too many questions. But I am too old now to keep carrying these ghosts, and if the painter was right, if that warning was more than a nervous man's superstition, then I cannot allow another night of silence. Not for me. Not for them. The wound is open now, and there's no stitching it back closed. I didn't plan the confrontation. It came out of me like a cough, sudden and impossible to hold back. It was 2 nights after the painter's warning. We'd returned to the house because Marcus insisted I was being ridiculous, that dragging the children out in the middle of the night had been irresponsible. He used that word, irresponsible. I bit my tongue until it almost bled. The house smelled the same as always. Polish, damp wood, the faint perfume Ashley leaves in every hallway. But to me, it was different. Every creak in the floorboards had teeth. Every shadow had a pulse. The attic door was closed now, but I could still feel it breathing above me, heavy as a storm cloud. That evening, after dinner, Ashley was leaning against the counter, a glass of wine in hand, the picture of effortless elegance. Marcus was stacking plates, a performance of domesticity he never bothered with when it was just me. They looked like a pair rehearsing for an audience, and I suppose I was it. I asked, calmly at first, "Did either of you go into the attic?" Marcus glanced up, frowning, then let out a small laugh. "The attic? No. Why would we?" Ashley didn't even look at me. She sipped her wine, her lips leaving a faint stain on the glass. "Maybe she's hearing things," she said softly, but loud enough. Her voice had that sing-song pity I've always hated. "I'm not hearing things," I snapped. "That painter saw something. He was afraid. You should have seen his hands shaking." Marcus dropped the plates into the sink with a clatter. "Mum, you can't go around scaring the kids with this nonsense. A painter got spooked, probably drunk on fumes. You can't take every word seriously." Ashley finally turned to me then, her smile sharp enough to cut paper. "Evelyn, you've been under so much stress. Maybe this isn't the right environment for you. Big old houses, they play tricks on the mind." That's when I saw it. The look Marcus gave her. Not me. Her. He was waiting for her judgment before deciding how to treat me, and when she raised her eyebrow, he sighed like a schoolboy caught between teacher and lesson. "Mum, maybe Ashley's right," he said carefully. "Maybe you just need rest. You've been confused lately." Confused. The word hung in the air, poisonous. I felt the heat rise in my face, my heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap the glass from her hand and watch it shatter. But instead, I just stood there, my fingers curled into my palms until the nails bit flesh. "You think I'm losing my mind?" I said quietly. Ashley tilted her head. No one said that, but her eyes said everything. Marcus looked at me the way his father used to look when I asked questions he didn't want to answer. Tired, irritated, like my voice was a mosquito buzzing too close to his ear. I forced myself to breathe, to steady. "I've lived in this house for 30 years, I said. "I know when something isn't right, and something isn't right." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Mum, enough." That was it. Enough. Conversation over. My years in this house, my instincts, my sacrifices, they all counted for nothing. I went quiet then. Not because I was defeated, though that's what they thought. I went quiet because I recognized the shape of the moment. This was how betrayal always looked at first. Small dismissals, soft gaslighting, a smirk from someone who thinks they already won. I'd seen it before. I'd lived it before. And this time, I wasn't going to let it bury me. As I watched Ashley swirl her wine, as I watched my son refuse to meet my eyes, something inside me solidified. It wasn't anger yet. It was steel, cooling in my veins. Let them think I was confused. Let them laugh behind my back. That's how they got careless. That's when the truth slipped out. So I bit down the fire in my throat, gathered the dishes from the table, and carried them to the sink. They thought I was retreating into the same old silence, but I was listening, and I was waiting, because the attic wasn't just in my head, and Ashley wasn't just a woman with a sharp tongue. I knew it in my bones, and I would find out the truth, no matter what it cost me. It happened late one night, after everyone had gone to bed. The silence of the house pressed in heavy, the kind that doesn't comfort, but suffocates. I couldn't sleep. Not with the attic crouched above me like some animal waiting to drop through the ceiling. I lit the small lamp on my bedside table and sat in the dark with my thoughts. The painter's words wouldn't leave me alone, and neither would Ashley's smile. A part of me wanted to believe Marcus was right, that I was just tired, letting grief and years of strain twist my perception. But then I thought of all the other times I'd been told the same thing, and how every single time I'd been right to question. By 2 in the morning, I was tired of doubting myself. I climbed the stairs, slow and careful, until I stood at the attic door. The wood was cool under my hand. I half expected it to resist, to stay locked the way so much of my life had, but it gave easily, swinging open on hinges that didn't even creak. The smell hit me first. Stale, chemical, wrong. Not dust, not mothballs. Something sharper. Inside, I found boxes, dozens of them, stacked in careful rows. Each one was labelled in Ashley's handwriting. Neat. Efficient. My stomach turned. I pulled one down and opened it. Inside were papers, financial documents, bank statements, contracts with my name typed neatly at the top, but my signature forged at the bottom. I sat down hard on the attic floor. The breath knocked out of me. My hands shook as I shuffled through them. Investments I never made. Loans I never took. Property agreements I never signed. The dates stretched back years, as though I'd been living another life above my own head, a life someone else had been orchestrating. I whispered into the dark. Oh God. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. Identity. Security. Dignity. Stolen in quiet strokes of a pen. And Ashley had been behind it. The woman who smiled at me with wine-stained lips, who called me sweet but simple, had been strip-mining my life from the shadows. I found more boxes, each one heavier than the last. Credit cards I didn't know existed, maxed out in my name, a second mortgage application, and tucked in a smaller folder, correspondence, emails printed and saved, letters, her plans laid out like blueprints, her justifications careful, cold. She wasn't just cruel, she was deliberate, and Marcus, my own son, had signed his name beside hers. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the boxes apart and scatter the papers down the staircase like confetti. But I sat there instead, breathing through the rage, because with every page, every forged line, the truth sank deeper. This wasn't only about Ashley, this wasn't about her charm or her cruelty. Marcus had chosen this. My son had chosen this. That realization hurt more than any forgery, more than the theft, more than the lies. He had looked at me, his mother, the woman who carried him, who worked herself raw to keep him fed, and decided I was expendable, disposable, a name to be used, a signature to be faked, a life to be hollowed out. It was bigger than I'd ever imagined. Not just betrayal of trust, but betrayal of blood. I sat there in the attic until dawn, the papers spread around me like gravestones. The house was quiet, but I felt every wall humming with deceit. For years I'd been worried about being invisible, forgotten. I never thought my own son would erase me on purpose. When the first light of morning slipped through the attic window, I stacked the papers back neatly. I put the box in its place, smoothed the dust from my skirt, and closed the door behind me. I didn't say a word to Ashley over breakfast. I didn't let Marcus see the fire burning behind my eyes. I stirred sugar into my tea with steady hands and listened to their chatter. They thought they were clever. They thought they were safe. But the attic had spoken. The truth was out. And I was done being erased. I used to believe that strength meant enduring, that if I just outlasted the storm, the sky would clear. But sitting at that breakfast table, watching Ashley butter toast with a hand that had signed away pieces of my life, I understood something new. Storms don't pass when you wait. They pass when you learn to strike lightning yourself. So I began to plan. I waited until the house emptied, Marcus at work, Ashley driving the children to school, and I returned to the attic. I catalogued every paper, every forged document, every scrap of evidence. I photographed them with the steadiness of a woman who has nothing left to lose. Each picture was a nail in their coffin, and I drove them in with quiet precision. I opened my old chest in the bedroom, the one I hadn't touched in years, and pulled out the tin box at the bottom. Inside were my records, the kind most people throw away, but I had kept. Tax returns, letters from the bank, even the deed to this house, proof of my hand, my real signature, my paper trail. I laid them side by side with Ashley's forgeries. The contrast was sharp. One was me, the other an imposter. And as I looked at them, I felt something almost like pride. They had underestimated me, just as everyone always had. They thought I was too soft, too simple, too old to see through them. But they forgot that silence teaches you to listen. Years of being dismissed had trained me to catch the smallest slip, the faintest whisper of deceit. I wasn't alone in this either. That evening, I asked my daughter-in-law, the younger woman Ashley had been so quick to belittle, to sit with me in the garden. She looked wary, her eyes darting toward the kitchen where Ashley lingered. But when I told her what I'd found, the relief on her face was so sharp it nearly broke me. She'd suspected things. She'd seen accounts in Marcus's name she didn't understand, decisions made without her knowledge. She'd tried to ask, and Ashley had laughed it off, Marcus brushing her aside the same way he did me. We sat there under the dim porch light, two women bound by wounds from the same hand. For the first time in years, I felt less alone. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "Yes, you do," I told her. "You've known all along. You were just waiting for someone to stand with you. And that's the thing about betrayal. It isolates you, makes you believe you're the only one losing your footing. But when you find another voice that quivers like your own, suddenly the ground feels steadier. Together we mapped it out. What evidence to keep, what to hide, which of Ashley's boxes to leave untouched so she wouldn't notice, which papers needed copies for the lawyer I'd been too timid to ever call until now. The plan wasn't wild or reckless. It was careful, deliberate, sharp. We would build a wall of truth, brick by brick, and when it was tall enough, we would let it fall on them. Not in anger, but in justice. I stopped crying then. I stopped trembling. The grief that had hollowed me for years cooled into something steadier. Resolve. I thought of my mother, who once told me, "Dignity isn't given. It's taken back." I hadn't understood then, but I do now. Dignity is reclaimed in quiet hours, with steady hands, while the betrayers laugh over dinner, unaware the noose is tightening. I pressed the younger woman's hand in mine. For the first time, she didn't look small. She looked fierce, even through the fear. They had taken so much from us, but they had also given us this, each other. And that, I realized, was their first mistake. Because when women stop standing alone, the house of lies begins to crack. The day I struck wasn't chosen at random. It was a Thursday, ordinary, forgettable, the kind of day no one marks on a calendar. That was the point. Betrayal hides in plain sight, so justice must arrive the same way. Quiet, unannounced, but undeniable. By then, I had a folder thick with evidence. The forged signatures, the fraudulent accounts, the second mortgage papers, even emails where Ashley outlined how she'd manage me into compliance when the time came. I carried it in a plain canvas bag, the same one I'd once used to carry groceries. Somehow that felt fitting. The younger woman, my unexpected ally, sat with me in the lawyer's office as we laid everything out. I had chosen a woman lawyer, someone who looked me straight in the eye instead of past me. She didn't flinch, didn't call me dramatic, didn't ask if I was confused. She only nodded, flipped through the papers, and said, "We have enough. Enough." I hadn't heard that word in my favor for years. From there, the process moved faster than I thought it would. Letters were sent, accounts were frozen. The deed to the house, my house, was secured under my name again. The lawyer filed charges for fraud, Identity theft, forgery. A judge signed off on a restraining order that kept Ashley from meddling with anything while the case was pending. The first blow landed quietly. With a phone call Ashley answered at the kitchen counter. I watched from the doorway as her face shifted from irritation to disbelief, then to fury. She slammed the receiver down and turned to Marcus, her voice sharp, urgent. I didn't catch every word, but I didn't need to. I already knew. The second blow landed 2 days later when Marcus's bank card was declined at a restaurant. He came home red-faced, snapping at Ashley, who snapped right back. I sat in the living room, knitting, my face calm. Inside, I could feel the cracks spreading through their perfect little facade. But the final strike, the one that broke them, came in the form of a court summons delivered by a sheriff at our front door. Marcus opened it, saw the envelope, and went pale. Ashley snatched it from his hands, read, and for the first time since I'd known her, she didn't smile. She turned her gaze on me, sharp as a blade. "You!" she hissed. I didn't flinch. I didn't rise. I simply folded my hands in my lap and met her eyes. "Yes," I said. Marcus rounded on me, his voice cracking. "Mum, what have you done?" "What you taught me," I said evenly. "Stay quiet. Endure. Pretend not to notice. But I'm finished with that lesson. It's your turn to learn." He opened his mouth again, but no words came. For the first time, I saw him as he truly was. Not my boy, not the man I hoped he'd become, but a child who had chosen the easy path of deceit because he thought I'd never stop him. The younger woman stepped into the room then, shoulders back, her voice steady. "It's over, Marcus. You don't get to do this to us anymore." I saw it in her eyes, the flicker of power, the first taste of dignity returning. That was justice too, as much as the summons, as much as the frozen accounts. Ashley stormed upstairs, cursing under her breath. Marcus followed, his footsteps heavy, frantic. Their voices rose and fell, panicked, desperate. The house itself seemed to sigh with relief, like it had been holding its breath all these years. I stayed downstairs, calm, almost serene, because justice isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout. It just waits until the moment is right, and then drops its weight, like stone. And that weight had landed. The silence after a storm is never what you expect. I thought I'd feel giddy, vindicated, maybe even young again. But the truth is quieter, heavier. Justice doesn't arrive like a parade. It settles like ash. Ashley moved out within a week of the summons. She didn't go gracefully. She screamed, threw a vase, spat words I won't repeat. But beneath the venom was fear. The courts had her cornered, her reputation fraying, her schemes documented and undeniable. All her polished charm couldn't rewrite the signatures in those boxes. She packed in a frenzy, her heels clattering on the stairs as though she could outrun consequence. When the door slammed behind her for the last time, the house seemed to exhale, as though it had been holding her poison in its lungs. Marcus. He stayed, at least for now. He's quieter, smaller somehow, though no less broken. I catch him sitting at the kitchen table at odd hours, his head in his hands. He doesn't look at me. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't even try to explain. And maybe that's worse. His silence feels less like shame and more like emptiness. I suppose I should feel some satisfaction in seeing him brought low, but I don't. I only feel the grief of a mother who finally sees her child for what he's become. Justice doesn't mend that kind of wound. It only stops the bleeding. The younger woman, though, she has begun to rise. She walks through the house with her shoulders back now, her steps firmer. She no longer waits for Marcus's approval before speaking. She looks me in the eye, steady, as if she's found her reflection again. One evening, she brought me tea and said softly, "Thank you for not letting me drown." I shook my head. "No, child. You saved yourself. I only reminded you how." Her dignity was hers to claim. Mine, too. Betrayal may wound in silence, but justice is a sound that echoes across generations. The community heard the whispers, of course. Small towns always do. People stopped by the gate, pretending to check their mailboxes, lingering too long, craning their necks for scraps of gossip. But I didn't shrink from their stares. Not anymore. I carried myself through the market, through church, through every errand with a steady chin. Let them whisper. Let them speculate. The truth was mine, and I had carved it out with my own hands. There were costs, of course. The lawyer's fees, the endless paperwork, the long nights of doubt where I wondered if I had gone too far, if perhaps the world would see me as cruel instead of just. But every time I faltered, I remembered the attic, the boxes, the forged signatures. I remembered Ashley's smirk, Marcus's dismissal. I remembered how close they had come to erasing me altogether. No, I hadn't gone too far. I had finally gone far enough. The house feels different now, lighter. The children's laughter doesn't echo against the walls with that same strained edge. They sleep more soundly. The younger woman sings sometimes while washing dishes, a sound I hadn't realized I missed until I heard it again. But in the quiet hours, when the moonlight pools across the living room floor, I feel the weight of it, the years wasted in silence, the trust I gave that was never returned, the son I raised, who chose convenience over conscience. Justice is satisfying, yes, but it's not warm. It doesn't curl up beside you at night. It doesn't erase the ache of being betrayed by your own blood. It leaves you standing in a cleaner house with clearer air, but with scars that will always throb when the weather turns. Still, I would not undo it. I would not trade truth for comfort. I would not hand back my dignity now that it's mine again. Ashley is gone. Marcus is diminished. The younger woman is standing taller. And I, at 62, am finally breathing air that doesn't stink of rot. That is the aftermath. Not triumph, not joy. Just a steady, undeniable knowing. I was right. I survived. And I made sure the lies collapsed before they buried me. When I was younger, I thought betrayal was something sudden, like a knife in the back. But I know better now. It's slower than that. Quieter. It seeps. It's the daily drip of dismissal, the quiet laugh behind your back, the papers signed in your name while you sit at the same table, unknowing. It's erosion, not explosion. And justice, well, justice is not what I imagined either. It doesn't taste sweet. It doesn't fill the hollow where trust used to live. Justice is bitter, sharp, necessary. It clears the rot, but it does not grow new roots. That work is mine to do, if I have the years and the strength left. I have been called many things in my 62 years. Sweet, simple, sensitive, all words meant to soften me, to shape me into silence. I carried them like weights, believing maybe they were true, but I see now what they really meant. Convenient. A woman who doesn't fight is a woman you can use. Never again. I look at the younger woman now, watching her move through the house with her head higher than before. I see her daughters watching her, learning from her new strength. And I think that is the true victory. Not Ashley gone, not Marcus diminished, but the cycle broken. A different inheritance passed down. My son's betrayal will always live inside me, like a splinter too deep to dig out. Some nights, I still hear his voice in my head, telling me I'm confused, telling me I'm imagining things. But when the doubt creeps in, I remind myself of the attic door, half open, the smell of chemicals, the papers spread like a map of my erasure. That was real. My instincts were real. My voice was real. And I was right to trust it, even if it came decades late. If you've lived as long as I have, you learn there are no clean victories. Justice doesn't restore what was stolen. It only prevents more from being taken. But that prevention, that line drawn in stone, matters more than I ever knew. I don't regret a single step. Not the silence, not even the wasted years. Because without them, I wouldn't have learned the shape of betrayal. And without that, I wouldn't have recognized the power of truth when I finally claimed it. The attic is empty now. The boxes are gone. The dust disturbed. the lies dragged into daylight. Sometimes I still glance up at the door when I pass the stairs. It stays closed, and for the first time in years, I feel no fear when I see it. There is peace in that, though not the kind I once sought. It is not the peace of endurance or the peace of obedience. It is the peace of having spoken, of having acted, of having refused to vanish quietly. And so I end here, not triumphant, not weeping, but steady, because I know now the truth that took me 62 years to understand. When a door stays half open too long, rot seeps in. Sometimes the only way to breathe again is to tear the whole house down.